True stories of police horror. The radio fell silent before the screams in Detroit. Story 1, submitted by Marcus H. from Detroit, Michigan. I used to believe a police radio was the one thing in the world that could never fail you. That steady crackle, that ribbon of voices threading through the static. It felt like a lifeline, like proof that someone out there always had your back, even when I was exhausted, even when the city felt like it was rotting from the inside out. But the night our radio went silent, I learned how wrong I was. It happened on a Thursday early October, the kind of night Detroit gets when summer refuses to die and the air sweats out its last breath. My partner, Ruiz, and I had just cleared a domestic call near Connor Street. Nothing wild, a guy yelling at his girlfriend, both of them swearing we were overreacting by showing up. We cleared the apartment, wrote a quick log entry, and headed back to the cruiser. That's when the first burst of static hit. Not the normal kind, not the soft hiss that fills dead air. This sounded like something dragging against a metal grate. Harsh, scraping, almost intentional. I remember Ruiz frowning and tapping the radio mounted between us. "Probably the tower again," he muttered. Dispatch said they were working on... A scream tore across the channel. High, clipped, brutally human. Male. Young, maybe. We both froze. Then the radio cut off. Just silence. "Dispatch, this is Unit 712, I said into the mic. "We just caught an unknown distress scream on Channel 1, requesting confirmation of officer in trouble." Nothing. Not even static. Ruiz tried, switching through the frequencies one by one, but all we heard was dead air, a thick, unnatural silence that felt like it was being held there by something. Before I could say anything else, every street lamp on the block flickered at once. We looked at each other. Neither of us said it, but Detroit has pockets, blocks, alleys, whole stretches of road, where the city feels wrong. Abandoned factories, empty schools, old warehouses boarded up so long they might as well be tombs. The scream had come right before the silence, and every instinct I had told me whatever it was, it came from close. "I'm getting out," Ruiz said, unbuckling his seatbelt. "No backup," I reminded him. He looked at me. "You heard that scream?" "Yeah, I had." We stepped onto the pavement. The air was thick, humid, and too still. Somewhere in the distance I heard the hum of the freeway, but everything else felt muted, like someone had thrown a blanket over the city. We moved toward an old brick building at the end of the block. Boarded windows, sagging roofline, black graffiti looped across the door. A cash and carry market that had closed 3 years ago after a shooting. A place kids dared each other to break into. As we got closer, I noticed something odd. One of the boards over a window was cracked open, just enough to see a sliver of darkness inside. The radio crackled once behind us. We both spun around. The cruiser was still, lights off, engine off. But the radio, I swear to God, whispered something. Not words exactly, more like breathing, slow, wet. "I'm calling this in again," I said, walking back and grabbing the mic. Before my thumb even touched the button, the radio came alive. A chorus of voices, overlapping, distorted, all of them screaming. Not a single one formed words, yet I recognized the panic, the desperation, the sheer animal terror. It was as if every voice was trapped somewhere, trying to claw its way out through the speaker. Then, behind the screams, I heard another voice, a woman, whispering, calm, too calm. "They can't hear you." I dropped the mic. It clattered against the floorboard. Ruiz swore under his breath and drew his firearm. "We're not dealing with radios tonight," he said. "We're checking the building, now." I didn't want to go inside. I could admit that now. Something about that window, about the warped boards, about the smell, metallic like hot pennies, made my stomach clench. But I followed him. We pried the loose board aside and stepped into the dark. The air inside was cold, so cold it felt like we'd walked straight into a freezer. The smell was stronger in there too, and thicker, like old rust and wet cement. The beam from my flashlight cut across the floor first, where dust lay in thick, undisturbed layers. No footprints, No signs anyone had been inside recently. But in the far corner, something gleamed. A police radio. Ruiz moved toward it, stepping lightly, like the floor might give out from under him. He knelt, picked it up, inspected the markings. 7112B, he said quietly. This was Carter's backup radio. Carter had gone missing in July. Not AWOL, not resigned, missing. One night he just didn't show up for roll call. They found his cruiser on the shoulder of I-94 with the lights still on. No sign of him. "We need to go," I whispered. My voice cracked when I said it. But Ruiz wasn't listening. He was turning the radio over in his hands, as if trying to understand how the hell it ended up here. That's when the lights went out. Not the building. We didn't have lights. The flashlights. Both of them. Just gone. Darkness swallowed us whole, and in that darkness I heard movement. Slow, dragging movement. Not footsteps, more like something being pulled across the floor. Ruiz's voice was tight. "Marcus, do you see anything? Anything at all?" "No," I said. "But something's..." The dragging sound stopped. Silence pressed in, thick and absolute. Then, right next to my ear, "Marcus." It wasn't Ruiz's voice. I froze. Something cold brushed the back of my hand, soft, deliberate. I swung my flashlight instinctively, but the light didn't come on. I shook it, hitting it with my palm, trying to force it back to life. "Ruiz," I whispered. "Where are you?" "I'm right here," he said. But he wasn't. His voice came from the opposite direction of where I'd felt the touch. Something else was in that room with us. My radio crackled to life on my belt. Only one word came through. "Run." I grabbed Ruiz's arm and pulled us toward the faintest sliver of light leaking through the broken window. Something behind us moved. Faster this time, scraping, rushing. And we both scrambled through the opening, hitting the pavement hard. Once we were outside, our flashlights flickered back on. The streetlights buzzed back to life. And the radio, perfectly normal. Dispatch asking why we hadn't responded for the last 20 minutes. The whole incident, the screams, the whispers, the voices, didn't exist on their end. Not even the initial scream that started everything. Ruiz and I both transferred precincts within the year. He moved out of state. I don't blame him. But sometimes, late at night, when my house is quiet and the world feels too still, my radio, the personal one I keep on a shelf, crackles, just once, just enough. And every time I hear someone breathing on the other side, waiting for me to answer. Waiting for me to come back. Story 2. Submitted by Danielle R. from Flint, Michigan. I'm not proud of much from my years as a dispatcher, but I used to take pride in one thing. No one ever slipped through the cracks on my shift. Not a single stranded motorist, not a single panicked domestic call, not a single officer who needed backup. I used to think the job was about control, about order, about being the calm at the center of chaos. But there's something I learned the hard way. The worst horror isn't the screams you hear over the radio. It's when someone is whispering to you and you realize they shouldn't be alive to speak at all. It started on a Wednesday night in November, the kind of cold where the wind claws through every layer you're wearing and the roads shine with a thin glaze of black ice. It was the overnight shift, the grave shift, as everyone jokingly called it. I was alone in the comms room, except for Jenkins, who worked the neighboring console. We weren't friends, but we shared the quiet the way people share a cup of coffee, not warmly, but out of necessity. Around 2:15 a.m., the main dispatch channel crackled with a noise like someone dragging a wired microphone over concrete. I turned the volume down, expecting it to clear. Instead, the noise sharpened and suddenly cut off. Then came a voice. A man, barely above a whisper. "Dispatch, requesting assistance, north of Hemphill and Fenton. Please don't let him find me." I frowned, typing as I spoke. Unidentified officer requesting help north of Hemphill and Fenton. Sounds injured. I keyed the mic. "Unit calling for assistance. Identify yourself." Silence. I repeated the call twice and finally the voice came back. Weak, wet, strangled. The 33. Unit 33. That should have been it. Quick, clear, takeoff point. But the thing was, Unit 33 had been decommissioned 6 years earlier. I checked the logs anyway, scrolling back through old records. The last officer assigned to that number was Sergeant Noel Porter, and the memory hit me like hitting black ice. His death had been a big one. He'd crashed his cruiser into a ravine during a high-speed chase out on Pearson Road. They'd found the vehicle mangled like it had been crushed in a junkyard compactor. Porter's body was never recovered. The official report said he must have been thrown and swept down the river. But why would someone be using his call sign? Jenkins looked over at me. "Who's on 33 tonight?" "No one." He froze mid-sip of his coffee. "You sure?" "Positive." The radio crackled again, this time with harsh, ragged breathing. Then Porter's voice, unmistakably his, from old recordings we used in training. "Dispatch. He's right behind me." My entire body went cold. I tried to keep my voice level. "Sergeant Porter, if that's you, I need you to verify your badge number." Long pause. Then, "I remember when you brought brownies in your first week. You left early because you said the room smelled like burnt wires." My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth. How would anyone know that? I had never told anyone, not coworkers, not friends. The smell had been from a blown transformer down the hall that day, and the memory was small, stupid, insignificant. But it was mine. "Jenkins," I said, "ping that radio. Now." He nodded, hands trembling slightly as he pulled up the triangulation software. A new sound bled through the speakers, something like metal buckling, followed by a low groan, almost human, almost not. Then Porter whispered, "He's wearing my face." I felt something in me snap. "Where are you? Tell me where you are right now." And then, louder, urgent, "Don't send anyone! Don't!" His voice cut out, replaced by a shrill tone that made both of us yank off our headsets. The ping came through on Jenkins's monitor. He squinted. "No. No way." "What?" He swallowed hard. "The signal is coming from inside our parking garage." I stood. "Which level?" "Sub-basement." "No one uses the sub-basement." That's why I said no way. My hands were shaking so badly I had to hold on to my console. A structural engineer had condemned the sub-basement after flooding had warped half the support beams. There was no power down there, no lighting, no authorized access. Everything had been moved out years ago. Yet the radio signal, Porter's impossible voice wader, was coming from there. "I'm going down," I said. Jenkins stared at me like I'd said I was going to walk into traffic. "The hell you are." Someone's down there using a dead man's call sign." "Exactly. That's why you stay up here." But I couldn't. I don't know how to explain it except that the voice had known me, known something private, trivial, intimate, something only someone who'd been in the room with me could have known. I took the elevator down as far as it would go, level 1. After that, the stairs were the only option. The metal door into the stairwell groaned like it didn't want to be opened. By level B, the air turned damp. By level C, it smelled like mildew and rust. By level sub-B, the temperature had dropped so sharply I could see my breath. My radio crackled on my hip. Not Porter this time. Something else breathing. Slow. Heavier than a human chest should be capable of. I stepped into the sub-basement. My flashlight beam caught rows of rusted pipes, cracked concrete pillars, standing water rippling across the floor like something had just moved through it. "Sergeant Porter?" I called. Something shifted in the darkness. Metal clinked, and then I saw it, a police radio lying on the ground, half submerged in the water. Its indicator light blinked weakly, like a dying heartbeat. I moved closer. That's when I saw the reflection in the water. A face behind me, my face. Except the eyes weren't mine. They were dark, wet voids, like someone had scooped them out and filled the sockets with river water. I spun around, slipping on the slick concrete. My flashlight skittered away, beam bouncing wildly across the pillars, but no one was there. I heard whispering behind me again, my own voice this time. "Danielle, you shouldn't have come down here." I backed away, stumbling, heart rattling in my chest. The radio on the floor came alive with an unearthly shriek. I grabbed my flashlight and ran. By the time I burst back into the stairwell, Jenkins was waiting at the top landing, pale as chalk. He didn't ask what I saw. Maybe he could read it on my face. Maybe he heard it through the open channel. The official report said signal interference, faulty equipment, possibly a prank, but I know better. Because every now and then, on late nights when I'm alone in my apartment, my phone buzzes with a blocked number, and when I answer, I hear my own voice whispering back at me, "Unit 33, requesting assistance." Story 3, submitted by Tyler M. from Scranton, Pennsylvania. People think the scariest calls cops get are the ones with guns involved. Barricaded suspects, active shooters, hostage situations. They're wrong. The calls that really get under your skin, the ones that sit in your bones long after you're off shift, are the ones where you don't know what you're dealing with, where the facts don't add up, where the scene feels off in a way you can't explain on paper. This happened during my second year on patrol. I was still young enough to think I understood fear, still arrogant enough to believe training could prepare me for anything. The call came in at 3:41 a.m., a few days after Christmas, cold enough that the inside of the cruiser frosted if you breathed too hard. "Unit 12, check out a disturbance at 4026 Willow," dispatch said. Caller reports banging in the walls, no sign of forced entry. Willow Street, old neighborhood, heavy with sagging porches, cracked sidewalks, tired people. My partner Boone glanced over at me. "Banging in the walls? Great, another raccoon call." But when we pulled up to the address, raccoons didn't feel like the right explanation. The house was a narrow two-story with peeling yellow paint and a porch light that flickered like it was dying of exhaustion. The caller, a skinny guy in flannel pajama pants, paced in the doorway, wringing his hands. "You the ones I talked to?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "You said the noise is inside the walls?" He nodded rapidly. "Started about an hour ago. First the basement, then upstairs. It's moving." "Moving?" "Like walking." Boone shot me a look that said, "He's crackling," but I didn't think so. His eyes were too clear, too focused. We stepped inside and the temperature dropped at least 10 degrees. My breath fogged immediately. Boone swept the living room with his flashlight, but nothing looked disturbed. Furniture neat, TV off, family photos lined up like soldiers. "Where'd you last hear it?" I asked. "Upstairs," the man whispered. "By my daughter's room." He didn't need to say more. We followed him up the creaking staircase. Halfway up, I felt something strange, vibration, subtle, like someone knocking rhythmically on the studs behind the drywall. Thump, thump, thump. Boone raised his brows. "Not a raccoon," he mouthed. The hallway at the top was narrow and dark, the only light coming from a weak nightlight plugged into a socket shaped like a ceramic moon. The air smelled faintly acidic, like old copper pipes or pennies soaked in vinegar. The man pointed to the last door on the left, his daughter's room. We heard it clearly now, a dragging sound, slow, purposeful. Inside the wall directly behind the door. "She's not home," he whispered. "She's at her mother's tonight." I checked the room already. Nothing's in there. I braced myself and opened the door. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Pink walls, stuffed animals, posters taped crookedly, but it was freezing inside, colder than the hallway, colder than the stairwell. My flashlight beam hit the far wall, and I saw the marks. Scratches. Long, jagged scratches running vertically from baseboard to mid-wall height, fresh enough that the drywall dust still clung to the edges. Something inside the wall dragged its weight again, and the stuffed animals on the shelf rattled. Boone whispered, "Jesus Christ." "Okay," I said, forcing my voice not to shake. "We're going to check the basement. Possibly an animal got into the ductwork or inside the studs." The father nodded, but he looked like he was about to throw up. We headed back down, and as we descended, the banging grew louder, right beneath our feet now. But it wasn't random. It had a rhythm to it. Thump, 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 like knocking back to us. The basement door opened with a shudder. The light switch did nothing. We went down anyway. Our flashlights swept over old holiday decorations, a broken treadmill, dusty boxes stacked to the rafters. The air felt thick, like the whole basement had been exhaling slowly for hours and we'd walked into its breath. Boone pointed his light toward the far wall, cinder block with a single narrow access panel where old plumbing ran. The sound came from behind it, something pushing, scraping, dragging. Boone muttered, "I'm going to open it." Wait. Too late. He pulled the metal panel aside. And inside the cavity, hunched and twisted in a way the human body isn't meant to bend, was a shape. I only saw it for half a second, enough to register that it wasn't an animal. It had shoulders, arms, hands pressed flat against the interior of the wall, as if it had been waiting for someone to open the panel for a very long time. Then it moved, so fast I didn't see it, only heard the crack of Boone's flashlight hitting the floor and the father screaming upstairs. The panel slammed shut with such force it shook dust from the ceiling. Boone stumbled back, breathing hard. "Tyler, we need backup, now." I grabbed my radio. Unit 12 requesting immediate. Static. Thick, choking static. Then a voice threaded through it, a little girl's voice. "Don't let him out." Boone's face drained of all color. "Tell me you heard that." I heard it again, this time from somewhere in the basement itself, not the radio. "Don't let him out." The father was shouting our names from upstairs. Something crashed, then another crash. The whole house shook. We booked it up the stairs. The hallway lights flickered violently as we reached the landing. The father stood outside his daughter's room, staring in disbelief. The wall inside the room was swelling. Actually swelling. Pushing outward like something huge was trying to force its way through the drywall. Cracks spidered across the paint. The stuffed animals toppled. The posters peeled off. "Get out of the house!" I yelled. We dragged the father outside. Boone radioed for backup again. This time it worked. And we watched from the porch as the wall inside the girl's room buckled outward with a deep cracking sound. But nothing came out. The wall stopped, shivered, and slowly eased back into place. Backup arrived, searched the entire property, found nothing but shattered drywall and fresh gouges. Animal control checked for entry points. Structural engineers checked for shifting beams. Everyone had a theory. None of them made sense. The father and daughter moved a week later. Boone quit within the year. And me? Sometimes when I'm passing old neighborhoods on late-night patrol, I get this urge, a tightness in my throat, like something is knocking behind the walls of the world, asking to be let out. And I can still hear the little girl's voice, faint as a draft coming through a crack. Don't let him out. Story 4, submitted by Evelyn S. from Asheville, North Carolina. I worked for the county sheriff's office for 13 years, most of them on night patrol. I liked the quiet, the long stretches of empty roads, the hum of the radio filling the cruiser like a second heartbeat. Nights made sense to me. People slept. The world slowed down. But after what happened on Highway 19, I don't drive alone after dark anymore. Not even as a civilian. Not even with the doors locked. It was late February, 2:08 a.m. Steady rain coming down in thin needles that blurred the world into streaks. The kind of cold rain that makes you feel like you're dissolving into the night. Dispatch pinged me for a welfare check. Anonymous caller reporting a car stalled on the shoulder near mile marker 142. Hazards blinking. Driver possibly unconscious. Pretty standard. The drive out there took 7 minutes. The highway was empty. No headlights in either direction. No truckers. No late-night commuters. Nothing. Just my cruiser and the rain. I saw the stalled car up ahead. An old Chevy Malibu, beige, the kind of color that disappears into the dark. Its hazards blinked a soft amber, like a heartbeat slipping out of rhythm. The driver's side door was cracked open an inch. That was the first thing that made the back of my neck prickle. People almost never leave their doors cracked in weather like that. I radioed in. Car appears unoccupied, I'll investigate. A beat of silence. Then dispatch responded. Copy, Unit 84. Proceed with caution. But the voice that said it wasn't the dispatcher I'd been talking to all night. This voice was lower, slower, Unfamiliar. I paused. Who's on dispatch now? Static. Then the regular dispatcher, Janine, chimed in. Evelyn, I'm here. Everything okay? I hesitated, looking at the radio like it had just spoken in tongues. Yeah, I said. Thought I heard someone else. You didn't. Her voice sounded normal, grounded, steady, and yet a small part of me wondered. I stepped out of the cruiser, the rain needling the back of my neck. The Chevy sat quiet, except for the metallic ping of cooling engine parts. No movement inside. Sheriff's office, I called out, shining my flashlight through the open door. The interior smelled faintly of wet fabric and something else. Something sweet and sour, like old fruit left in a hot car. Umbrella on the passenger seat, purse on the floor, phone in the cup holder, screen cracked, but no driver. I leaned in further. The keys were still in the ignition. That was the second thing that felt wrong. People don't walk off into the night down a rain-soaked highway with their keys still in the car, especially not out here, in the mountains, where visibility drops to nothing in minutes. I clicked the radio again. Janine, I need a name on the registered owner. Silence. Then, he's behind you. But it wasn't Janine's voice. I spun around so fast I slipped on the wet asphalt. My flashlight jittered across the empty road, painting nothing but rain and blackness. Dispatch, say that again, I said, breath catching. Janine came back instantly, sounding confused. Say what again? I haven't responded since you asked for the owner. I took a step backward, toward the safety of the cruiser. I heard someone on the channel. No one's on channel 3 but me. My hand tightened around the flashlight. The rain felt colder now, sharper, like the air itself was listening. I closed the Chevy's door and swept the area with my beam. Footprints in the mud would have made sense. Tire tracks leading off would have made sense. But the mud was untouched. No prints, no drag marks, nothing. Like the driver had vanished straight out of the seat. I walked toward the guardrail to scan the embankment. The drop wasn't far, 20 feet, maybe. But the brush was thick. I angled my light downward. Movement. I froze. Something pale moved between the trees, slow and deliberate. Human-sized but wrong in its posture, hunched, long-limbed, like it didn't know how to use its own body. I tried to focus the beam on it, but the rain fractured the light. Hello? I called out. Sheriff's office. I'm here to help. It stopped moving. The shape stood perfectly still. A second passed. 2. 5. Then it tilted its head, or at least the top part of its silhouette shifted sideways, like a bird trying to understand what it was hearing. The radio on my shoulder hissed. A whisper slithered through the static. Evelyn, don't go down there. It wasn't Janine. It wasn't anyone I knew. It was my mother's voice. My mother who died 4 years earlier. My knees nearly buckled. I stepped back from the guardrail instinctively, eyes still fixed on the pale shape below. My flashlight flickered. Once, twice, then died. The radio erupted with overlapping voices. Hundreds, all whispering at once, as though every speaker was pressed to the mic at the same time. I couldn't make out any single sentence, but one line rose above the rest, repeated over and over. Get back in the car. My cruiser sat 20 feet behind me, its headlights cutting twin tunnels through the rain. Every instinct screamed run, but I forced myself to move steadily, never taking my eyes off the embankment. The pale shape moved again, upward, toward the guardrail. I backed faster, my boots splashed through puddles, heartbeat drowning out the rain. The voices in the radio crescendoed, all whispering in unison now. He's coming up. I didn't look. I ran. I threw myself into the cruiser, slammed the door, locked it, jammed the gear shift into drive. Tires skidded against wet pavement as I pulled away. I didn't breathe until the stalled Chevy disappeared completely from my mirrors. Only then did the radio cut to silence. When I got back to the station, Janine swore she never said anything except the initial confirmation. She showed me the logs. There were no other transmissions on the channel. None. The Chevy was gone by morning. No record of it being towed. No driver ever reported missing. But I will tell you the part I've never put in any official report. 3 nights later, driving home after my shift, my radio, the personal one clipped to my visor, crackled softly, and in the quietest, clearest whisper my mother's voice breathed, "You didn't look at his face." I slammed on the brakes so hard my coffee spilled, because she was right, I hadn't, and whatever it was climbing up that embankment, I don't think it had one.